What do Toys R Us, Sears, Walgreens, and even the home you live in all have in common? They've all been touched and in many cases gutted by private equity. For me, this story isn't just a business story. I grew up in Chicago, home to both Sears and Walgreens, two household names that shaped everyday life in my city. And like many of you, I grew up going to Toys R Us. Now sure, online shopping helped accelerate their decline, but what I've come to realize is that in the end, private equity didn't create value in these companies. It actually helped to destroy them. Private equity firms promise to save struggling businesses. They swoop in, armed with billions of dollars and big-name expertise, and tell us they'll fix what's broken. But here's the reality. More often than not, these firms don't save companies. They strip them for parts. They load them with debt. They close stores, cut jobs, and walk away richer while employees, customers, and communities are usually left holding the bag. And it's not just businesses anymore. Now, private equity has set its sights on something even bigger, the housing market. They're buying up homes and apartments across America, bundling rents into Wall Street securities, and turning the most basic part of the American dream into just another financial asset to be traded. So in this video, we're gonna pull back the curtain on how private equity really works, why I think it's destroying not just businesses, but jobs, communities, and even the chance at the American dream. So how does private equity actually work? Allow me to break it down simply. Step one, they buy a company using borrowed money. A private equity firm will put down maybe 20% of their own money and borrow the rest from a bank. But here's the trick. The debt doesn't stay with the private equity firm. It gets dumped onto the company they just bought. Step two, they extract value. This means charging all kinds of management and transaction fees, cutting staff, reducing benefits, and even selling off the company's real estate, then even renting it back to them. Step three, they exit. Private equity doesn't usually stick around for the long haul. They want a quick turnaround, usually within 5 to 7 years. So they'll sell a company, take it public again, or just cash it out. By the time they leave, the private equity investors will walk away with millions, sometimes billions, but the company itself, it's often left weaker, strapped with debt, and fighting to survive. Now on paper, this sounds like just another way to run a business. But think about it. Is this really about building a company for the future? Or is it about squeezing out as much cash as possible in the shortest amount of time? Because here's the truth. Private equity doesn't create, it destroys. It destroys struggling businesses and impacts entire industries. So what happens when private equity takes over? Let's look at the casualties. The most famous example is Toys R Us. This was a store I grew up with. I loved it as a kid, and I even was able to take my own kids to one of the very last locations before it shut down for good. Now, it's not like kids stopped wanting toys. It's not even that parents stopped buying them. Sure, online shopping played a big role, but what really killed Toys R Us was the mountain of debt that private equity loaded onto the company. Year after year, they were drowning in interest payments. When the bills came due, they couldn't keep up. Suppliers pulled back, shelves went bare, and then the jobs disappeared. 33,000 people lost their livelihoods. At first, no severance until a public outcry forced private equity to set up a small fund. But by then, the damage was already done. An iconic store was gone. Then there's Sears, another Chicago institution I grew up with. At one time, Sears was the pride of American retail. The Sears Tower wasn't just a building, it was a symbol of ambition. But under private equity and financial engineering, Sears wasn't rebuilt. It was slowly gutted, stores shuttered, employees scattered, and what was once an icon of American retail was reduced to bankruptcy filings and liquidation sales. And today, I can't help but worry about Walgreens, another company rooted in Chicago. Walgreens is where millions of Americans fill prescriptions, get health advice, or simply grab the everyday essentials they need. But now that it's been acquired by private equity, the question is, what happens next? Will it become another casualty? Another short-term play for Wall Street profits? And it's not just retail. Private equity is moving into industries that most people never imagined. Healthcare, and even professions like mine, accounting. Across the country, old established CPA firms that have served businesses and families for generations are quietly selling out to private equity. Major deals have already happened. Private equity is even buying up smaller accounting firms, promising efficiency. But what it really delivers is debt, cost cutting, and a loss of the personal touch. But here's the problem. Accounting isn't just about money, it's about trust, independence, and long-term relationships. And private equity isn't built on those values. As a CPA myself, this one hits close to home. I've spent decades in this profession, and I can tell you from experience, this isn't going to end well. If private equity gutting our favorite stores wasn't enough, now they've set their sights on something far more personal: housing. That's right. After the 2008 financial crash, millions of homes went into foreclosure. Families were forced out. And who swooped in to buy those houses at fire sale prices? You guessed it, private equity firms. What started then has now exploded. Today, Wall Street landlords own hundreds of thousands of homes across the country. In some neighborhoods in Atlanta, 1 out of every 5 houses on the block is owned by private equity. And in Austin, more than a quarter of all apartments are owned by corporate landlords. And here's the part most people don't realize. Your rent isn't just your landlord's income anymore. Private equity takes those monthly rent checks, bundles them into bonds called rental-backed securities, and sells them to investors all over the world. That means your rent payment could be funding a pension in California or even a sovereign wealth fund overseas. But Wall Street doesn't stop there. They tack on fees, online payment fees, pet fees, admin fees, nickel and diming renters in every way possible. And then they use software to set rents. Programs like RealPage are being investigated right now for allegedly letting landlords collude by using algorithms to keep rents artificially high. So while you and I see a house as a home, private equity sees it as just another financial product. And when housing becomes a Wall Street asset class, affordability takes a back seat. The result? Families priced out of their neighborhoods, young people locked out of the dream of home ownership, and just like we saw with Toys R Us and Sears, private equity isn't building stability, it's exploiting it. Only this time, the target isn't a retail chain, it's the American dream itself. So why does all this even matter? Because when private equity preys on businesses and now housing, it doesn't just hurt companies, it destabilizes entire communities. When Toys R Us collapsed, it wasn't just a toy store shutting down, it was tens of thousands of workers losing jobs, parents losing health benefits, and whole towns losing a community hub. When Sears went under, Chicago didn't just lose a store, it lost part of its identity. And when Walgreens is stripped down, what happens to neighborhoods that rely on it for prescriptions and healthcare? Here's the irony. Many of these private equity deals are funded by pension funds for teachers, firefighters, and city employees. In other words, workers' own retirement savings are being used to price them out of their homes and gut the very businesses they work for. And while this is happening, private equity is pouring money into politics. They spend millions on lobbying Congress to protect their tax breaks. They fight rent control measures. They push for regulation that benefits them. So ask yourself, who's really benefiting here? It's not the workers, it's not the customers, it's not the communities. The winners are a handful of Wall Street firms extracting value at every level. This isn't capitalism creating growth. This is something else. Vulture capitalism. It's short-term profits over long-term stability. It's squeezing value out of companies and communities until there's nothing left. And the scariest part, it's all perfectly legal. Now, to be fair, private equity firms will tell you a different story. They'll argue that they inject capital into struggling businesses, make them more efficient, and sometimes even save them from total collapse. In housing, they'll point to new construction projects, what they call build-to-rent communities, entire neighborhoods designed for families who can't buy but still want a decent home with amenities. They'll also say that their scale brings operational efficiencies. So if you need a dishwasher replaced, they've got 24/7 property management and bulk discounts at Home Depot. And in some cases, that's true. Not every private equity deal ends in disaster. Some companies do stabilize. Some renters get a better managed home. But here's the problem. Those are the exceptions, not the rule. The incentive structure of private equity is short-term. Their goal isn't to build strong businesses or thriving communities. It's to maximize returns as quickly as possible. That's why we see the same playbook over and over again. Load on debt, slash cost, extract fees, then exit. So yes, there are two sides to this debate, but when you look at the track record, Toys R Us, Sears, countless other retail chains, the housing market, even now professional services like accounting, the story is clear. Private equity doesn't exist to build, it exists to take, to extract value. Whether it's a toy store, a pharmacy, or a home, you and I are the ones left paying the price. Now, private equity didn't create the challenges facing retail or housing or even accounting, but they've learned how to exploit them. And in the process, they've gutted iconic businesses, destabilized communities, and turned the American dream into just another Wall Street asset. What started with toy stores and department chains has now spread to pharmacies, healthcare, housing, and even the professions we trust with our livelihoods. And if private equity can do this to our stores, our homes, and our careers, what part of the American dream is safe? The scariest part? It's all perfectly legal and it's happening right under our noses, quietly. So the question we have to ask ourselves is simple. Is this capitalism working the way it should, or is it time to rethink a system that rewards destruction over creation? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think private equity is just the free market at work, or is it a predatory model hollowing out America's future? Let me know in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, share it with someone who needs to see it, because the more we understand what's happening, the better chance we have to push for change. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.